everybody, it's Tom Christie back in the painting studio, and this morning we're going to start session 1 of painting this Ruddy Duck Drake in winter plumage. If you haven't checked it out, there's a carving series on how I carved this bird, and now this will add to that. We want to get this painted in a gunning style. I've got some reference pulled up here. I'm going to pull the camera in. I have a hen Ruddy here that I did a long time ago, and we'll take a look at that because the technique we're going to use is a lot of fan blending on these feathers. I also have a Ruddy Duck Drake in winter plumage from Joe Wooster, 1971, so it's been around a long time, but we'll take a look at that bird too because it's good reference. The colors look like he's right on. And then we'll take a look at some of the reference I've seen online. There's a lot of variation in these birds, especially in winter plumage, when it loses all that bright rusty red color and the bright blue bill and goes to this more muted. I've seen a lot of variations in the bill color, a lot of variations in the side pocket breast colors as it transitions from red to brown. It depends on the time of year. But I picked one that I think I want to do this version, and it's very similar to Joe's bird here in terms of color. And again, this is a gunning decoy, so it's going to be a relatively simple paint job. Should be fun. If you're enjoying my channel, please hit the subscribe button. That does help me out. It's free as I continue to build this channel with resources for people that might want to carve wildfowl of any kind, or hunting decoys in this case. Welcome back. All right, let's take a quick look at these two birds. Again, we're doing a drake, but I thought it might be helpful to take a look at this hen. This bird was made in 1989, so 36 years ago. I kept it in my collection because it really did well in shows. It retired undefeated after about 6 shows. It got first in Westlake, the World, St. Clair Flats, Point Malay, McGee Marsh, and the Dayton show in species. And then it did place in diver a few times, but I really like the way the bird turned out. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is this bird was painted with fan blenders and textured to begin with. And as you can see, the Ruddy has this very mottled, almost peppery look, particularly on the back, the feathers of the scapulars there. And we're going to want to do that same thing here. A little closer look at that texture. It's a good, quick way to simulate that texture, and we'll do that on this bird. So kind of cool to have that bird still around after all these years. It's unbelievable to me that that was 36 years ago. This bird was made even longer ago, 54 years ago. And I picked this up for my collection quite a while ago because I had met Joe Wooster. He was a very popular and successful competitive carver from Ohio. And this was first place Ruddy Duck Blue Ribbon Purchase Award class at the Davenport, Iowa show, August of 1971, Joe Wooster. I really like the bird, and I'm going to use some of what Joe did on this bird to paint my gunning bird coming up. Just another quick note, Joe Wooster used stippling on the back of his bird, maybe with a fan blender or a different type of brush, and to simulate that peppery look. And that's another good approach for a gunning decoy. I'm going to start out with a base coat of material mixed 50% burnt umber, heavy body Liquitex acrylic, 50% Liquitex acrylic gesso to give us this consistency. and I'm going to use that to paint on the bird, and then use a synthetic sponge to dab on the bird and give us some texture on everything but the bill. So I'm going to get a good coat on the bill, but a smooth coat with a large brush, and then we'll texture the rest of the bird. So I'll show some shots along the way here as I'm texturing this bird. All right, I've got the bill painted. Now I'm going to go right over the eyes and not worry about those right now. We can remove that paint with an X-Acto later without scratching the glass. So I'm putting a pretty liberal coat of the material on, and then I've got a little on the palette. And I'm going to work that into the sponge. I need a little bit more, actually. Work it into the sponge so it's driven down in the texture of the sponge. And then I'm going to use that to daub on the bird and put a little bit of texture throughout. And sometimes I'll cut smaller pieces of sponge to get into tight spots like under the chin or back here behind the neck. It looks like I'm going to be okay with this sponge. So I'll go over the entire bird like that. I'll dry it between coats, and I'll probably give it a second texture coat. I don't want this to be rough as sandpaper. I just want it to be consistent throughout the feathered areas of the bird. Okay, I'll be back. It's a little farther along. It's just a quick shot of the textured bird after 2 coats, and I removed the paint from the eyes with an X-Acto. We'll let that dry, and then we can start to put on base coats. I've done some layout work, and there are kind of major areas of color. Definitely the white cheek patch here, and this dark cap, which runs right underneath the eye, right up to the tip of the bill notch here. Underneath the reference I'm looking at, there's still white on the chin under here, and that fades into kind of a gray brown area back here. So dark cap, off-white cheeks, gray brown here. The breast on the bird I'm looking at has some reddish tones to it, so I think I want to portray that in this bird, and then we're going to look for kind of a neutral brown color here so that I can put lights and darks on with the fan blender over that kind of mid-value color. The tail, I've got that marked out here. It is going to be a grayish brown. And then under the rump, this is all light back here, transitions into the darker value here. And then the back is pretty dark. So I'm going to paint that dark brown and then fade that into the breast. Okay, let's get going. I'm going to start by painting the cheek patch off-white. And that off-white is white gesso with a little bit of raw umber added to just reduce the brightness a bit. And this will take probably 3 coats by the time I'm done to get the color value where I want it. On these edges, I'm going to try to just softly scrub so I have a little bit of a blended area there. What we don't want is a hard line of paint that's a physical line that you can't disguise later. If I really piled this on, for instance, like that, there's going to be, when that dries, a ridge there. That's what I'm talking about. We don't want that, so I'm going to have to get rid of that. And that way we can get nice soft blends between the areas of color. So I'll go on these cheek patches. I'm also going to do the underside of the rump here and bring that up to about mid rump here so that we can transition into a darker brown color above. I'll be back. Putting a second coat on the rump here. And I'm just kind of fading that out before we get to the side pocket down here. All right, now I'm going to use straight burnt umber and paint the cap and the back up to the tail back there. And this will definitely take a couple of coats. I'm going to paint right over the eye. We can remove that material later. And this cap looks like it comes to a bit of a point in the back here. I'll get that painted and then we'll work on the back. All right, I've got the cap blocked in and now I'm going to use burnt umber again and hit the back, including the primaries. And then I'm going to use my brush and put a little bit of a blend into this white area. Just a rough blend right now. By lifting up on the brush as I get close to that white and just let it fade into the white. And then up here I'll do the same thing because we're going to want some of the lighter brown color going around the cape. So I'm just going to lightly brush in that area so that later I can come in with the lighter brown value of the side pocket and pull that through that area. This will definitely take 2 coats, and then I'll be back. I can also create a blend by stippling. And so I'm going to do that on the back where the coverts meet the tail, curled up in back here. I'm just daubing that on with a little paint on the brush and not worrying about having it perfect right now. I just want to create some softness, and we can do the same thing going back in the other direction. For this brownish gray area behind the cheek and below the cap, I've got raw umber and white gesso mixed together to give us this brownish gray color. Probably about 50-50 on that mix. And I'm going to paint that in this area and down under the throat. And again, probably take a couple of coats to get good color built up. You get down here, again, I'm going to leave a a soft line, and there's a little bit of an upturn in the reference I'm looking at. The breast kind of comes up in this higher head position a little bit, so I'm going to raise that breast up under the throat just a bit, and that's the way I have it drawn with the chalk. So I'm trying to go easy at the junction here, so there's a little bit of a blend started between the white patch and this gray. But we'll come back and put more of a soft blend there later. I'm just using the edge of the brush here with a little bit of this color and running over that junction. And the texture on the bird is picking up a little bit of that color. So we start to create a blend across that area, and I'll do the same thing with off-white going back into this gray. So we get a nice soft patch there. Again, not much paint on the brush, just enough to pull off a little color onto the texture. Same thing under the throat. I'm going to use that same mix on the tail, top and bottom, but I've added just a little touch of carbon black to the mix to make it a little darker, a little more gray. And I'll paint this the same top and bottom. And when I get to this burnt umber, same approach here. I'm going to use the edge of the brush to kind of pull lightly through the texture. I don't want much paint on the brush, so actually I'm unloading it on paper towel and just use the brush this way to create a blend into the burnt umber. And I'll come back with the burnt umber if I need to and blend in the opposite direction. I'll give that 2 coats. Just a quick update, I'm adding some burnt umber to that mix to make this tail value a little darker and a little more brown. I think I had it too gray and too light. Now I want to paint the side pockets kind of a mid-level brown. So I've got raw umber, raw sienna, just a little bit of burnt sienna, and come up with this kind of mid-range brown. And then we'll use fan blender lights and darks on top of this to put a little detail, feathering detail. This will take a couple of coats. I'm adding just a touch of burnt sienna on the breast just to warm it up a bit. And the reference I'm looking at, there's a little bit of a reddish tone left over probably from the plumage earlier, and gives his breast a little bit of a nice warm tone. So I'm using my big brush, just beginning to put that on, to get a feel for it. And I scrubbed a little of the side pocket value behind the head here. I'm going to continue to work on that. So I've got some work to do to get this consistent and get a nice blend. That reddish kind of fades out as we go into the side pocket. So I'm just doing wet on wet to get that tone in the bird. Now I've got a little angled brush with a little bit of this gray in it, and I'm just going to go back over these areas and scrub a blend between the brown and the gray, more than we had before. Just hit it quickly so we have a soft transition now that the brown is done, or the base coat anyway. So I'll take some time and go over the decoy with this little brush, cleaning out as I go to a different color, and just create some blended scrubs across these areas. Kind of like we did up here with the white. I'll work all of the areas of transition now just to create a softer blend. And again, if I get a little too much down in the brown and I need to come back with the brown in the opposite direction, we'll do that. For the bill base coat, I've got cobalt blue with burnt umber and a little carbon black to make this kind of dark blue, gray, brown base color. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of variation in birds as they transition through the winter and out of the spring and summer. I'm going to add a little more blue, cobalt blue in there, especially up near the face here. So I'll get that painted and then come back. Here's just a quick look at the base coated bird, kind of from all angles. I've got a little bit of work to do still to cover up a few spots, but I'll get that done. And in the next session, then we can start working on the fan blending and some of the details. All right, I think that's a good place to stop session one. We've got the bird textured, base coated, and base coat colors put in place. In the next session, we'll work on the fan blending, add some feather details, and finish the bird up. Until then, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.